Welcome to a new episode of Next Gen Ninja. I'm your host, Kory Faruqi. On this show, I interview those enterprise and entrepreneurial leaders that are building a world for future generations. So I love to call my guests on this show the Next Gen Ninjas because they're focused on what's next for the next generation. So today we're going to talk about virtual reality, augmented reality, and all other forms of reality. What does reality mean to a coming generation? As the physical world and the virtual world kind of become one, how are companies understanding this new model? How are they monetizing it? Where are the benefits? How are they seeing the benefits for themselves? And then how are they leveraging it to provide unique services for us, the consumers? My guest today is Veena Somareddy. She's a co-founder of Neuro Rehab VR, a healthcare-based therapeutic or therapy provider through virtual reality. Veena is someone that has built her career around this space of VR, AR. She knows all about this stuff. But she's not only designing and developing virtual reality and augmented reality systems, she is implementing them into things that we desperately need. And she's going to talk about some of that stuff. As a co-founder of Neuro Rehab VR, Veena leads a team that is building VR systems, virtual reality systems, to bring physical therapy to those individuals that have suffered a stroke or been diagnosed with neurological disorders and are in need of physical and cognitive therapy. So, Veena, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I think we're going to have a great conversation, and it's going to be a very unique conversation, very different from some of the episodes we have so far. So, without kind of diving into it too much, can you give us a lay of the land? Can you tell us about the difference between virtual reality, augmented reality, and some of the other areas like mixed reality, experiential reality, spatial computing? There's just so much stuff going on. And then also, tell us how you got into this space.
Okay. And as you can see from all the acronyms, this industry likes them a lot. So to start with, virtual reality is that what we concentrate in our company a lot on. Imagine you're inside a game. Instead of playing, if you're playing Doom or Half-Life, those are some of the games that I played when I was a child and in school. So you feel like you're inside the virtual world and you can interact with the objects and as if you were in the real world. When it comes to augmented reality, you will have digital objects placed, overlaid on the real world. So imagine you have a character from Half-Life on the table right now. That would be augmented reality. And then for mixed reality is a term that Microsoft like to coin. But now imagine you have this cup, which is maybe a digital object, but it conforms to the physical space of how this table looks. So it actually is on this table. So that's mixed reality. And to put all of this together, the industry came up with XR, also experiential reality. And then now it could also be called spatial computing. It's called spatial because now everything is around in a space. There's volume and depth to it. So if the object could be further away from you or closer to you, and you will know that, and you can interact with the object, the digital object in the real world. So that's kind of a comprehensive view of how all the different acronyms.
It's certainly a very interesting space. I think where it may have started and where it's gone and where it's going, we're seeing it's outside of the world of just being a gimmick or a toy or a game, and there's actual real usages of it. So tell us how you see VR. Let's talk about VR first. Virtual reality. How do you see virtual reality integrate into our lives moving forward?
Right. So for us, we use virtual reality for therapy. I'll be talking about that a little later. And then imagine now you have for training. For somebody who wants to train on a job really quickly, you could use virtual reality. And if you're training on a blue-collar job, maybe installing a vessel or a valve on a big oil or construction space, you can have the digital object right in front of you, everything that you're installing, and also have these connections or arrows showing you what to do next. So you're in this virtual world, you're immersed in your education. You're using your muscle memory and also actually doing the task, which will help you encode that transfer of learning much better. And for virtual reality, it's also being used in healthcare for anatomy. Imagine now doctors learn anatomy on books, which is 2D, but all of we are in 3D. So it just makes so much more sense to have the human body or anatomy in 3D space and learn through that instead of it being on books. So that's the way VR is transforming education.
And not only be immersed in it, but be immersed in it in a very cost-effective way.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So, whereas if you were studying medicine, you need to see these cadavers or
Right.
labs or whatever. Now you are immersed in it, and that image is created for you.
Exactly. So this is it can help with saving resources a lot, especially with hospitals. When they have to train somebody, they have to take away the operation room. Imagine you're learning how to do pre-surgery setup or post-surgery setup, or even putting on your personal protective equipment if you're a nurse. That's a project that I work on when I was working on my PhD.
They take the labs, right?
They take the
and instead of having to have a student in the lab
Right.
in the middle of a surgery, having to get a student in, not really be interacting, but just kind of watching. Now this
Exactly.
student is able to really immerse themselves
Right.
without causing too much damage.
That's true. What I was trying to say, they block off a part of the hospital and then do all of this personal protective training or any other kind of training, which is a waste of resources and also time for them. But imagine now you can take this home too. So you're working on it longer, you're putting in more educational hours, and you'll probably be a better surgeon or a nurse in the end.
It's phenomenal. And then, and not just only from a perspective of healthcare, but construction companies are using AR technology, augmented reality technology, or even virtual reality technology to design buildings, walk through these buildings.
Exactly.
Right? So tell us a little bit about the trends you see in the industry as it grows, in not just in healthcare, but across all industries. Where do you see the trends of virtual reality? Up till now, I've just, it's been fun. I use it. I have a Samsung. I've had a Samsung Oculus set, and my kids love playing games on it and draining my battery. But where do you see the actual trends going between virtual reality, augmented reality, and some of the other things you're talking
Right.
about?
When you think about virtual reality or augmented reality, the first thing that comes to mind is gaming, and that's how it kind of started. When the industry started in around 2012 when the Oculus came out. But now it's permeating other industries such as education. One, you can, as we previously spoke, you can just have better education when you're in an immersive world and you do not have distractions around you. And the biggest one would be for enterprise, working on oil and gas industries or manufacturing industry where you can have better training. And even for sales, imagine you go to a store and you're looking at an object and imagine you have everything around it, the reviews for it, how much it costs, and maybe comparisons to other places all on that object itself instead of you going into your phone and looking at it. And if you come from the sales background, you are trying to get inventory. Imagine you're walking through Home Depot and the person has to know how many of these units are still left. You can have that information around that object, and it's an AR instead of going and looking at a piece of paper.
It's really become part of our reality. I talk about AR and VR and how seamless it seeped into our lives. And one of the examples I give is Pokemon Go, right?
Right.
Before I even knew what this thing was, I was having to drive my kids around chasing monsters, and it was everywhere. I mean, it spread like wildfire. And to that, I looked at it and said, unlike some of the other ways to augment reality, like 3D.
Right.
I bought a 3D TV, a ton of goggles.
Right.
It gave me a headache. so it wasn't really useful. But augmented reality, it's seamless. It just seeped right in.
Exactly.
Right? So tell us a little bit about those trends around AR now, because already if you're buying something on Amazon or something, you can click on the object and place it into your home and see what it would look like, right?
Right. So the best way to think about it is you have your phone, but instead of everything being on this little screen, it's all over and around you in the world. Some of the trends would be gaming, like you said, Pokemon Go was a really big hit. Before Pokemon Go came out, it was a game called Ingress with the same concept, where you had to go around and you're part of two different factions and you fight each other, but there are beacons all around.
Have fun.
It's a lot of fun. And then as retail, you said Wayfair is already doing it now. Before you online shop, you can actually place that sofa in your living room, and then you also know that sofa will go through your door, which is one of the hardest things that we have to deal with sometimes.
I didn't even think about that. That's a so there's just so many real world examples that are going to be there.
Right. And I can talk about, imagine in Matrix, I think Trinity learned how to fly a helicopter as she just had to upload it to her mind, but now you can have just-in-time information around any object that you want, and you can learn things about it as you go. What's happening right now in the oil and gas industry or other industries, there are this whole workforce that is retiring, and then there are millennials coming in who don't really have that experience and the knowledge that the workforce that are leaving. It's really hard to transfer that information.
Wow.
So now you can have just-in-time information where you could have that workforce, maybe he's retired, but you can call them maybe through an AR headset and Skype with them and ask them because they are looking at what your AR headset is looking at. They can see what you're doing and give you information that way. So that's one way.
It's so, it's amazing when you talk to industry experts like you that know that have this purview beyond just what's today and tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but there are things that I don't even think of, or normal people don't think of, about what's coming. One of the things that I think may be missing, and I'd love for you to highlight on that as well, is it gives you one of your senses, the visual part of it.
Right.
What about the touch and feel? Are we close to getting that touch and feel and really immersing ourselves, smell, and kind of really going after all of the senses?
So there are a few companies that are working on gloves. Haptex is one of them. And anybody who's here in Dallas or maybe in LA, there is this experience called The Void, and it's open in the Cinemark. Here you go into this virtual world which is mapped to the real world. So you have haptic feedback. You're picking up a toy gun, but in the virtual world you actually have a real gun. So you have that haptic feedback. So there are these VR arcades that are coming up which are immersing both the senses of the real and the virtual world together. And when it comes to haptics, we have haptics in a lower sense happening right now. So if you are playing a game using a virtual headset and controllers, when you hit something, you'll feel the controllers vibrate. So you still get kind of rudimentary haptic feedback when it comes to vibration, but there are many companies that are working on different kinds of gloves where it could be you get the sensation of touch, or you can get a sensation of vibration, so it makes you feel like you're actually in that world. And
amazing.
In our virtual reality lab, there were people who worked on smell too. So if you're in the virtual world and you're smelling an onion, maybe we can actually recreate that.
That's just amazing. So this is, it's really interesting. Tell us a bit about what drew you into this world of augmented reality, virtual reality, and what kind of you've based your career on this stuff. So tell us a little bit about that.
I was a gamer. I used to game a lot when I was in high school and in school. So that kind of, I didn't know I would end up making games for therapy later on in life, but that's kind of how it started and was the foundation. And I did my master's in game design and development and have a bachelor's in computer science. So this world, virtual reality, seemed like the best crossroads for both my skills, and I thought it would be a good place to start and be. And I was always an avid technologist where I go buy things from Kickstarter before they're out and gamble Kickstarter. So always looked forward to what the next technology would be, and I was drawn towards virtual reality because the opportunities in it are endless when it comes to AR and VR.
Yeah, there truly are, and some of the things that you're mentioning, I didn't even think of. So let's kind of come back to your company.
Mm-hmm.
As a founder of a virtual reality company focused around healthcare, around therapy. Tell us a little bit about what Neuro Rehab is doing, Neuro Rehab VR, and how you're implementing these virtual reality systems for physical therapy, or physical and cognitive and neurological therapy.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So like I said, I've always been interested in virtual reality, but I received an internship in Silicon Valley in a company where I started to create medical simulations using VR, and that's kind of how it segued into this is what I want to do, be in healthcare. And with Neuro Rehab VR, I met my co-founder, Bruce Conti. I think we have a picture up there with his son using a virtual reality headset with the Locomat. So how it started was he ended up having a brain injury about 3 years ago, and he wanted to get onto a physical therapy gait training robotic system. That's how the clinic started, and then we started to use virtual reality because we figured out neuroplasticity of the brain. Actually, the concept of neuroplasticity, where you've had a stroke or a brain injury, the healthy parts of your brain can take over the functionalities of the damaged areas. And that's kind of all the concept of how we build our applications work. When it comes to the neurological physical therapy, there are a lot of patients, more than 800,000, who are diagnosed with stroke. Each year, 1.4 million are diagnosed with spinal cord injuries, and there are so many people diagnosed with neurological disorders. And all of them need some kind of physical therapy and cognitive therapy. But physical therapy right now is expensive. Clinics are really far and apart, so it's really hard to get to those clinics. And traditional physical therapy could be boring sometimes. They don't really want to do it. And we started this company to make it more fun, engaging, and get physical therapy to everybody who really needs it without, and they have insurance or not.
What an amazing concept. And I love the integration of fun into something that is painful and boring, right? You sound like a doctor, by the way, with all these terms. So it's interesting that you ended up in the healthcare space.
Right.
So now you kind of are the virtual reality doctor kind of thing, right?
A little bit, maybe.
Yeah, amazing. So do you think, one of the things you talked about and you touched on right now is the cost effectiveness. Mm-hmm. But we live in a world, especially in this country, in the US, where a lot of the treatments that patients get are predicated on what their insurance providers will approve.
Right.
And so this is obviously much, much more cost effective. And not only that, but it's a benefit as well. You make something fun, people are going to want to do it.
Right.
So do you think there's going to be a time where insurance providers may actually demand that, you have to implement these?
Right. That is our, hope. But I think it is going to get there sooner or later, because how the whole healthcare industry is changing too, and how they are focusing on value-based care and patient experience than the volume of patients that you get through your door. They want to know, insurance also wants to know, are they progressing, and they want quantitative data. So we have a huge backend where we can record patients' range of motion, the joint angles, the hip angles, the response times in the virtual world. Are they being focused or distracted in their task? With this quantitative data, we can progressively show how the patient is getting better or not, with quantitative numbers, without it being being subjective. That's how it's usually done right now. So all of this will factor into, one, showing the patient that they're getting better can keep them motivated to keep going and actually recover. And for the therapist, who spend about 15 to 20 minutes of their time writing notes. If you've been to a doctor's office, you will see them writing notes, half the time you're there. So we're trying to automate all of those processes. So now the therapist is can concentrate on the patient and doing things that cannot be automated. So that's the piece. And with value-based care, the reimbursement models are changing. There are more reimbursement models for telemedicine and remote monitoring. So healthcare knows that you'll have to take that to your home and not just be in the clinic anymore. So with these systems, we can send a VR headset to a patient's home. Now they can continue the therapy that they started in the clinic at home and keep going, instead of it being a one-off situation where they do therapy for 2 to 3 times a week and it's not enough, and it's only for as long the insurance covers. It's not enough for them to recover to any point where they can lead an independent life. We're trying to change all of this.
Sure. You know, I physical therapy is something that teaches a patient what to do, but the physical therapist can't be with the patient all the time. So
Right.
the intent is, look, I'm going to show you what to do, what kind of stretches or exercise or whatever, and then the hope is that you'll continue doing that.
Exactly.
But I don't know how many people do that. There's times when I've had to.
Compliance is pretty
Yeah.
low.
So this is great. This is taking this home, making it fun, making it part of a reality that you can do this, making it easy. So, one of the things about these virtual reality headsets is that they're clunky. They're kind of big, and they're not seamless. Where like maybe augmented reality headsets may be going, like Google Glass or other kind of glasses. Do you see that the virtual reality headsets, do you see that size diminishing smaller and smaller and smaller?
Definitely. Since I've been in this industry since 2011, before that in the 1990s, that's when you had the really clunky headsets where it had to be propped up from the ceiling because the person couldn't take the weight of the headset. But the technology is going forward really quickly, and with Moore's law, things are getting faster and better, but also smaller. Just recently, the Oculus Quest was released, which is a virtual reality headset with 6 controllers, which is you can do orientation and position tracking, but it is not tethered to a computer or a PC, which all of these headsets wear. So that kind of opens up a big market for people, for home therapy, for people in the clinic, or take your headset wherever you want. So they're getting smaller and better, and it'll continue to happen.
And really democratized in terms of cheaper as well, right? I mean, you have companies like Magic Leap that are selling it now at the AT&T store or whatever, and
the price is going down too. You had to spend about at least $2,000 to $2,500 because you needed a gaming PC to run that virtual reality headset. Now just the headset about $400, and much easier for people to buy.
Amazing. So where else do you see this? Let's say, and you pick. I mean, do you want to talk about where this is going from an industry perspective or from a healthcare perspective? But what are let's say, give us 5 top implications of real life scenarios where augmented reality, virtual reality, spatial computing, experiential reality, all of them kind of combine, and you see the benefits are exponential. So give us 5 examples. There can be 5 examples in healthcare or 5 examples overall.
Right. I think I'll start with healthcare. This opens up telemedicine. And like I said, you can have your doctor's appointment at home, but also feel like your doctor is right there, using VR and also networking. If you've seen your kids play multi-mass online games, they're all in this virtual world, but connected through their friends. So the same way you can have your patient in one room at their home, and the therapist as an avatar both inside the virtual world, and maybe talking to each other, going through the therapy, or you could even have patients working together in the virtual world. So now there's a sense of community building and socialization right there, especially for the...
So doctors being one, a doctor visit, right? Where else, like some quick examples of the best...
Think about esports too. Imagine if you are into esports or role-playing games and you are playing D&D on your table, you can have the virtual avatars or the augmented reality avatars right there, and you can imagine that scenario instead of
Yeah,
imagine that in your head.
in fact, the last soccer World Cup, I watched some of the games in VR, and it felt like I was sitting in the stadium.
Right.
So that's just amazing. I want to tie some of the topics that we've been talking about and speak about you. So this is a new show. I've been doing it now. This is the 5th episode, but you are not only my youngest guest, you are the first female, you are an entrepreneur, and you are the first millennial on the show, right? So the whole concept of this Next Gen Ninja is to say, look, in order for you as an enterprise leader to survive, you need to be focused on the next generation. But the next generation, not in terms of where you are. So as Gen X, not the millennials. I'm talking about the next generation that is about to enter the workforce. For you, that is the next generation. That's Gen Z, the digital AI native, right? So tell us real quickly how your generation, millennials, view the coming generation of Gen Z, digital AI native, and how you are addressing their needs, where you think they're going to be. Talk a little bit about how you're building the company around the future generation's needs.
Right. And with digital natives, they're born with having a phone in their hand and used to using Alexa or other Google services too, where they're used to AI as they're born with voice recognition. So I think the World Economic Forum did a survey where it said by 2022 about 70 million jobs will be automated, but there'll be 133 million jobs created. So what's happening is a lot of jobs are going to get automated by AI and robotics, but there will be so many more jobs that you need creativity, you need empathy, and ideas where you have interdisciplinary knowledge, especially in my field. I need knowledge in neuroscience, knowledge in computer science, and also how to create games. So what I would say for the next generation, they just don't need to think about one job that they would do, probably something that they should make sure that they're being more creative and more entrepreneurial, and make sure that job could not be automated, but also think of many creative ideas. There's so much more that can be done, and we are only scratching the surface as to how AR and VR and AI and everything will congregate together. And with 5G coming up, you can have better virtual worlds. You could have like a seamless world where the whole Earth is mapped, and all of us could be living in an augmented reality where the digital objects are an extension of you, which is right now our phone is an extension of us. Yeah. But imagine it just being more seamless. And
I think now, especially for me, right, I'm an extension of my phone.
Right, all of us are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I see it going.
So interesting. I had I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were mentioning, my daughter was talking about it, and she thinks AI is going to take over the world. And, it's not the Terminator view. You're not right looking at it. And there's obviously in anything that you create, in any technological advancements, there's a utopian path, there's a dystopian path. Right. You hope humanity would stick towards a utopian path. But today we are seeing the convergence of so many different technologies and so many different advancements and implications in real life, that it, especially with AI and the integration of AI into reality, into research, into a bunch of different things. So it's just a very, very interesting topic.
And this generation or the next generation can think of was, when you go back, at first it was, there was internet, and then there was phone, and then there was like Facebook and Twitter, and it was just one thing going at a time. But this is the age where all the technologies are, improving, and technologically moving at the same time. Like you said, AI with experiential spatial computing, blockchain, which we didn't talk about, and 5G.
Absolutely, it's just
converge at
too
some
much,
point.
too much to understand and talk about it. But it's a great time to be an innovator and be innovative. So, as I mentioned, we talked a little bit about entrepreneurialism as well. So as we wrap up this show, I want to give you an audience to really understand what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And I always say entrepreneurialism is like a wet box of matches. For those with an entrepreneurial drive and an entrepreneurial spirit, one of those suckers is dry. You're going to keep striking. Right. And it's never that you're going to hit your big break in your first strike. Sometimes you do, right? But entrepreneurialism isn't for everybody. But, I see more and more millennials getting into the entrepreneurial world, and it's great because whereas the previous generation will always look at the next generation as entitled or, they're not doing enough, they're not earning their stripes. I really look at the millennials as the first generation that is truly entrepreneurially driven, right? But you've taken that to the next step,
right,
and further than the next step into an emerging technology. What's life been like as an entrepreneur?
It definitely is a roller coaster. There's always highs and lows, and sometimes you live for the highs. But the learning has been really great. I've been learning so much from different disciplines, learning how, getting knowledge from the physical therapist, learning what the patients want, and also keeping an eye on what comes next, because you always have to think about 5 to 6 years in the future and where your company would be there, then think about the current movement. So it has been incredible for me, and I really like solving problems, and I feel like a lot of people who get into entrepreneurship is they see this problem and they want to solve it and try to go about it the best way they can.
Well, Veena, you summed it up right there, right? If I had asked you, what does it take to be a Next Gen Ninja, which I will ask right now. Right. The first thing you say is you got to think 5-6 years ahead, right? So as a quick summary of our discussion, what does it take to be a Next Gen Ninja?
Okay. One, like you said, think about the future, think about what's coming next, and think about what problems that will come about later without even knowing right now. One of it is climate change. We all know that's going to happen when we have to think about, how to solve it. But then as you're dealing with your day-to-day life, as you think about, these are the problems that will be solved, but there'll be more problems that might come about later that we wouldn't even think of. Maybe we're going to Mars, and how do we live on Mars? How do we grow plants on Mars? And that's something, having that vision of the future really helps.
Well, Veena, this has been an amazing discussion. We've talked about where, first of all, you've educated us on the differences between virtual reality, augmented reality, and the combination of all of those things, the implications in different industries like oil and gas and healthcare, the next phase of these mixed reality and spatial computing, which is maybe the touch and feel and really hitting all the senses to really immerse us. And a topic that I obviously love to talk about is the entrepreneurial life and the entrepreneurial topic. Thinking ahead, being passionate about thinking ahead, looking at new problems to solve, and even touching on climate change and Mars. So thank you, Veena. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much for making the time and for talking to our guests and viewers about all of those amazing topics.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
So this has been an amazing discussion with Veena Somareddy. She's the co-founder of Neuro Rehab VR. You can learn more about Veena, other guests that have been on the show, and future guests that are coming on the show on our website, www.nextgen.ninja. You can follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and all other social medias. Hashtag NextGenNinja. If you think of a future topic, if you think of a futurist, use that hashtag. and let's kind of build this community around highlighting who these futurists are and what they're doing for the next generation. You can follow me on Twitter. My handle is @KFaruqi. I'm your host, Kory Faruqi. And as always, stay future focused.